Do you have a Dallas famous moment? Whether you've brushed shoulders with a celebrity in DFW or had your own 15 minutes of fame in the city, we want to hear about it. Send us a DM or email or a voice message to share your story to be featured on an episode of the podcast. We look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for your support. Foundation 45 is a 501c3 nonprofit that funds counseling services for mental health, addiction, and suicide survivors. In addition to providing services, it works to break the stigma surrounding these topics. Foundation 45 recognizes that musicians, artists, and creative types are often at a higher risk for issues with mental health and addiction. The organization's goal is to serve the Dallas-Fort Worth creative community by providing free, top-tier mental health and recovery services. You can learn more about Foundation 45 at foundation45.org. Foundation 45. Live fast, die old. I'm Andrew Sherman. I'm a Texas transplant who has always been in pursuit of art as a career. I've played in bands, pursued an acting career in Hollywood, but I found it behind the lens of a camera here in Dallas, Texas. I was born in New York. I've lived in Chicago, Los Angeles, Austin, but I love Dallas. There's a magical artistic scene in Dallas that mostly goes unnoticed to the outside world. This podcast is focused on what makes it so special and the people who make it thrive artistically. If you don't live here, and even if you do, you might not have heard of them. This is the Dallas Famous Podcast. So who you gonna be? Who you gonna be when you're all grown up? Who you gonna be? Who you gonna be when you're all for us? Yeah. This week on the Dallas Famous Podcast, it's Power Couples. We're excited to welcome Amy Curnow and Marc Soloway, the powerhouse duo behind Zound Sounds. Zound Sounds is a music school that's been the cornerstone of Dallas's music community for 19 years. Marc founded the school with a vision to blend rigorous music training with a rock and roll edge, creating a space where young musicians could learn and grow. Amy, a classically trained vocalist with an extensive background in musical theater and voice acting, joined him soon after. Along with her teaching at Zound Sound, she's also a voice coach at Booker T. Washington, where she inspires the next generation of Dallas artists. In addition to their work in education, Marc and Amy perform together in Charming Gardeners, blending their musical talents and shared vision for creativity. Marc also has his band Solly, and his musical journey also includes performing in a band with rock icon Tommy Stinson. I know you're going to enjoy this episode with Amy and Marc. Here it is.
Just because you were talking about Kenny Withrow. Mm-hmm. So Kenny, I go way, way back with Kenny.
Yeah.
When I was a freshman at Booker T, he was a senior, and at that time, for whatever reason, he hadn't taken health yet, and as a freshman, I took it, and so I had heard of him, like he was the guy, he was the guitar player.
He was already the guy.
Yeah, and I was a freshman guitar player, so it was like, and so I already knew about him, and then we wound up in a class together, and he was just like so cool, like he was like cool senior guy, and of course Booker T didn't really work that way where everything was adversarial or whatever.
Sure.
And he made me feel like he was taking me under his wing, and we became friends. Like from my freshman year, like I was hanging with the cool guitar player guy, and it was Kenny.
Yeah.
And he was like lore to me, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh wow, he's actually just a kid in my health class.
Right.
And
yeah, I feel that way about him too. Just
and he was, and I'm so many people have a similar story about him because he's just a great dude.
He is a great dude.
And then we remained friends for a long time, just forever. And through all the and of course he was my first friend to get signed and go off and make a record and all that, so just a lot. It was always, Kenny was always kind of like the guy.
Yeah, I still think of him as the guy.
Totally, 100%. 100%.
I'm with Marc and Amy, and I'm at Zound Sounds. We're on location. This is the Dallas Famous Podcast, and thanks for having me over here.
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
Yeah. I think I became aware of you last year sometime, but then I don't think I got that there's like a performance space, and it's a school, and it's.
Well, part of that's new.
Okay.
As far as the performance space.
Okay.
So that actually has happened in the last year. I think was it our friend Maureen?
Mm-hmm.
Maureen Womack?
Oh,
is that how we all kind of got on each other's radar? I believe.
Oh yeah.
And we were doing our 18th anniversary. So Zound Sounds has been going on for 18 years.
That's incredible.
And it is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is. I've got friends with music schools had a music school and COVID knocked it right out. So it's cool that you're just still going.
Yeah, we were lucky and smart.
Yeah,
we were pretty smart about the way we did it, and we were real lucky that we just had. I mean, I think a lot of parents during COVID weren't taking things away from their kids because they needed things to do.
Right.
So we were real fortunate that we had a group of kids that were way into it. So during COVID, like, a lot of them like doubled up on their lessons, even though we were doing them virtually.
Or they try new instruments.
Right.
They would try, and as soon as they could get out of the house, like, they were coming over, not so much for the singing lessons because of the singing,
the respiratory
stuff.
Gotcha.
But like for guitar lessons, they would come over and we would just sit in the yard, like 6 feet apart, outside. It was great.
Wild. Yeah, no, I mean, gosh, I can think of a lot of parents that are like, I wish I knew about you guys during COVID. Amy, we haven't heard a lot from you. I see that you're from Lexington. Is that right?
I was born in Lexington, Kentucky,
right.
Yes.
Okay.
My father is an educator, and so he was teaching at a college in Wilmore, Kentucky, a little 2-stoplight town. And so that was where we lived for the first 5 years of my life, was Wilmore, and then we moved to Champaign-Urbana, actually Urbana, Illinois, because my father moved jobs to the University of Illinois, and he was not the director of bands, but was one of the band directors there at the U of I for a long time, about 5 years, I guess, 6 more years, and then we went to Atlanta. We moved to Atlanta.
Is that what I'm hearing? Is Atlanta in your place?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was, if you hear a little Southern accent, I've lived around the South my whole life. So after Atlanta, I was in Atlanta from 6th through 12th grade. Then I went back to Kentucky, and that's where I did my bachelor's and master's degrees.
Okay.
And then after that, I moved to Little Rock, Arkansas for about, I guess that was a year. Yeah. And then I came to Dallas in 2001.
Okay.
So I've been here ever since.
It's probably the least south place you've ever
right.
Southern, because like if you go to Georgia, it's not the same South
That's
as Texas.
South.
It's
Totally.
a very different. All my friends who've ever moved like from Texas to Georgia are always like, oh, now I live in the South.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Texas has its own.
It's a little Western
Texas,
too,
Yeah.
Wackiness. Of course, it's weird here.
The Wild West.
Yeah. No, and I moved here from L.A. and this is definitely the farthest south. Well, I lived in Austin.
I moved here from L.A.
Really? Oh yeah, I did know that. We're getting to that.
Sort of.
We're going to get to that. Yeah. No, I'm
Sort
not
of.
from L.A. either. Don't. Get me wrong.
Nobody's from.
Yeah, it's true.
Living there, you meet a few natives.
Yeah, I was married to a native, so it happens.
They're nutty.
But yeah, I know. Weird. Like she would go to Philippe's restaurant when she was like 5. So I was like, okay.
I know what you're talking.
Yeah. It's the French dip. They say that the French dip was invented there. Then there's another place that claims that they invented it. I forget the name of that place. But anyway, that's a whole other story. So last thing before we go back to your story, like how did you get to Dallas then? Like why did you come to Dallas, I guess?
Well, I feel like I was in Little Rock for about a year, and I was doing professional musical theater there for a little bit, and I was like, this is not, well, I got my bachelor's and master's in vocal performance, and so I was studying opera. I also sang in a band the whole time I was doing that, but then when I moved to Little Rock, I decided, I don't know, that's what I did. I was a cantor at a Catholic church for a while.
Well, I didn't even know there were cantors in Catholic.
Yeah. So they actually pay pretty well. And so I was a cantor at a Catholic church, and then I was auditioning for musical theater there and stuff. And then after about a year and a half, my ex, who I was with then, we got a job here in Dallas. And so I was like, let's go to Dallas. So
I was going to just interrupt for 1 second because I'm like thinking how much easier it is to be a Christian cantor because you don't have to learn any Hebrew.
Right.
That's got to be like much easier.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So,
okay, cool. And like, it sounds like you had a vast range of musical training.
Oh yeah.
What brought you into music in the first place?
Well, my dad is a composer.
Right.
Yeah. And so he is like one of the most famous top guys in the world for band music, symphonic wind band music.
What?
Yeah. So anyone that's ever played like a band instrument in the last 40 years, what would you play?
Saxophone.
Yeah. So you've probably played his music. His name's James Curnow. Yeah. So if you look him up, he's all over the UIL lists and all that stuff.
I'm sure I have, because I played lots of songs. I'm like, where did this come from?
Yeah. So my dad was like, he's been doing that since the 70s.
Okay.
And
still doing it.
Yeah. Not as much anymore, but he still does take a few commissions, but he doesn't travel anymore.
Gotcha.
So he's 81 and he's got a nice life in North Carolina.
Nice.
So.
Nice.
And like when he was probably in the midst of it, it was like, as he's writing these pieces, they're getting published, right? And so like if you go to the lists of what they're called, the prescribed lists of where these kids get to pull pull their music from for contest, and where band directors pull their music for like what their bands are going to play. He's like a huge portion, like, because just say you go in composers, by alphabetical, right? So Curnow is just this massive section, and at a certain point, his publishers just like, feed me Seymour.
Yeah,
come on, brother.
Whatever you
just
got.
keep
So
it
he's got
coming.
this
Keep it
huge
coming.
I wonder how
catalog.
many past guests or musicians are in the audience who are like, oh my gosh, that's your dad.
Yeah.
Like, because
It's
your last
crazy.
name is, it's interesting.
It's crazy. He's it was really a fun way to grow up too, because I just knew at a very young age, like, he was a very special human,
Yeah.
and I was always respected him.
I mean,
and
were you
just
singing it like at a really early age?
18 months old, they knew I could match
Wow.
pitch.
Okay.
So yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get back to you, Marc. So we know you went to Booker T, but let's back up. You're from Dallas originally, right?
I was born in Farmers Branch.
Okay. Good enough. Close enough.
No.
If you go
I'm
to
from Dallas. No,
yeah,
I'm from
yeah, you are exactly.
Dallas County birth certificate. Yeah, I was born here in 1967.
Okay, and then like, what was your initial draw to music? I mean, before you were playing it, like, what was
I always music was always a thing for me. Like, I don't remember there not being a thing, but the initial, I guess, the first thing I remember was Tom Jones. That's where I was just like, that's what I want to be.
Oh yeah.
When I was a kid in New York, he had a TV show, and so I just grew up just being like. Now my uncle swears to me the first singer I really loved was Dean Martin, but also told me it was just because he told me, this is your favorite singer. right. And then Tom Jones, She's a Lady is the first song I remember really, like, but then he had that TV show, and I was just like, that's it. That's what I want to do. So it's like, for me, there's never been anything else.
Okay. Well, you said New
You
York.
out, Simon? We love you, Simon.
Oh, hey, good to meet you,
Thanks, Simon.
Simon Pruitt, Dallas Observer. So, but you said, talking about New York, I'm confused.
So I was born here, but by 2 years old, my parents had divorced, and we moved to New York.
I got you. Okay.
And that's where my mom was from.
Okay.
So
you do have a New York vibe to me, I will say.
And just being there in those early years. So from 2 to like 8, I lived there, and then we came back.
Oh, okay.
So really, most of my life has been in Dallas.
Okay.
And but I've had times where I left for long periods of time. So I was gone for like 5 years in those really early years.
Right. Do you think that helped you disengage from this area? Because I know a lot of people kind of stick around, like they just love it and they just kind of find a way to make it work.
I always felt like I was trying to leave Dallas.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
Like right now, I'm like, my life is killer and super comfortable here, and I love it. And like, it's like, I'm 57 years old. It's like, what am I going to do? Go start somewhere else.
Right.
But I'm still always like open to the idea, honestly.
Okay.
But when I got back to Dallas this time at 30, whatever I was when I came back, and I was totally like, I'm here till it gives me a reason to leave. Mm-hmm. Still here.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
totally. A lot of
100%.
people here are glad that you're.
I don't fight it,
Yeah.
and it's been great.
Okay.
So it's like, oh well.
And so you're like extremely classically trained. What's your training like? How does that look?
Well, I went to Booker T.
Yeah. Okay.
So I am. I am hip to music theory and stuff like that. I'm not classically trained. When I was there, the guitar program, they didn't really do a lot of classical. They had this awesome jazz guitar teacher, and his name's Chuck Pangburn, and he still teaches around Dallas. And he influenced like a generation of guitar players.
Need to have him on.
Kenny Withrow.
Yeah.
Was his, you know, he was Kenny's teacher. He was Sam Swank, you know, I mean, just like players, you know, me.
I love that. That's how you do it.
And it's funny, like I've had students that we've shared over the years, you know, now that I'm a guitar teacher, and like they would be like, oh, I take also from Mark Solomon. He's like, oh, Mark Solomon, he was always a rocker. I don't know that he
like you're like too much.
And I don't know that he necessarily meant that as a compliment, but I think
it could have been either, yeah.
A little jab there.
But anyway, so when I was there, it wasn't really a classical kind of vibe. Now the kids get a lot more classical.
Like you can't get in unless you do a classical piece.
Yeah, so really? I was always just interested enough in being a good guitar player that I just wanted to be well versed, and so I've always had like a couple classical pieces that I know that I keep in my back pocket, whatever, and that's served me really well in helping the kiddos now get in.
Right.
But at the time, I did it because I learned them because I wanted to, and it didn't have anything to do with my schooling.
Interesting.
And so, but I definitely was into music, like music theory. Like I enjoyed that aspect of just how it's all put together. And so as I was learning, like, so that aspect of classical learning, I kind of got into.
Right.
Because I like just understanding where it all comes from.
Sure. God, I'm like sitting here going, oh my God, there's like too much to ask because like going back to you, it's like you're a voice actor too.
Yeah,
you did
I love
professional
doing that kind of
musicals, you're saying. Like what other professional music stuff? I mean, like it sounds like you guys are like you're a textbook example of like I can make a living doing this so many different ways.
I can, and I love to be able to just do what I can singing. I also sing in Elton John's, the Elton John's.
Oh, okay.
I sing in, I always tell people I sing in a whole band just so I can sing harmonies because I love singing harmonies so much, right?
I can feel
yeah,
that, yeah.
I love it. And being a lead singer my whole life, you don't sing harmonies, you know, obviously. And so I was asked to sing in that band about 2 years ago, and it's a lot of fun, and we have some great amazing musicians in there. We have a string section.
Right.
So it's just, that was a big draw to me too, because being classically trained, like to sing with strings again was just a really cool thing
When
to do.
did you first do like a rock band? You said you were in a band the whole time and you were doing
Well, the
stuff.
band when I was in college was more, it was...
Maybe not rock, maybe. What was it?
It was like a jazzy, everything I've done has kind of been jazz influence,
Okay,
really.
gotcha.
Yeah,
a
so
little
that...
bit rock and roll, a little bit jazz.
Yeah, totally. And so that was like a jazzy, I don't know, folk. It was weird. It was really weird because the guy this guy approached me. He wrote all these songs, and he had this guitar, this hybrid guitar it was a classical guitar that he had sanded off the top 3 frets and made it into a bass, and then the bottom 3 were guitar. And so he played this hybrid bass guitar, and then he would have we had a drummer, and then we'd have like a horn player. And then me singing. Yeah. So, and we do like coffee houses and, you know, that kind of stuff. So that was that. And then
That's Kentucky?
Yeah, that was when I was in Lexington. And then after I finished my master's, when I moved to Little Rock, I didn't have a band in that short amount of time. But when I moved to Dallas, I started singing in this band called Shanghai Five. I formed a band with Bill Longhorse, Greg Prickett, Reed Robinson. We had various drummers, but and we were a thing for 5 or 6 years. We won Best Jazz Band, the Dallas Observer in 2007.
Cool.
So, and then I've just been I actually sang in a country band for a while at that same time. Like whatever I can do to sing.
Donnie Ray Ford?
I love it. Donnie Ray Ford and the Widowmakers. I sang with them. And that was also, I was kind of like Shanghai Five morphed into Donnie Ray Ford. And he became the lead singer, and I just did backup and sang harmonies and played tambourine. And it was just a fun, good time.
Cool.
And yeah, so then Charming Gardeners, Marc and I have been doing Charming Gardeners since about 2007 or 8 after Shanghai Five.
So that's been going on for a minute.
Broke up. And
9 is when it came.
when we did our first recording. So 2008 then. It must have been when we started. And then our first recording was, and our first songs we wrote were 2009.
We did when we first started, we have a charity for music education that we started. And
what's that called?
It's called Way Into Music.
Okay.
And so when we first launched it, one of the things we did for awareness and to raise a little money was we made 2 records with the Zound Sounds family. One was, I'll give them to you, but one was the teachers, and it was like, and the teachers at the time were Trey Johnson, Chris Holt.
What?
Yeah, I mean, I need to even look at the thing. Gerald Irigori, who was actually in our band, Chad Stockslager. So basically, we wound up putting this teacher record together that was the band we were putting together. Some of my solo stuff. King Bucks were on it. Chris Holt, the Slack, was on it. Carter Albrecht's family gave a song for because right when all that went down with Carter, we were trying to get him to teach at the school. He was just so busy.
Right.
But we did wind up, so we put together this really cool record. Obviously, was there a sort of song on it, or was this a Trey song? Yeah, it was just a Trey song, I guess. And you're on that one, I think. It's one of those.
I sang.
And then we went to the kids and we were like, okay, we know some of y'all write. Who's got songs? And so all the kids who had original songs. So we put 2, like a tandem CD set out. The students and the teachers, and it was all original music.
That's a great idea.
And that's how we kind of launched it. And it was something at the time we were like, and we'll do this every year. But we haven't done it since.
Right. I was going to say, like, maybe it's time to do another
definitely.
one. You know, because you probably have a nice collection of graduates at this point.
And even like the, what would we call them? The alumni of teachers. Like when we did the anniversary thing, like not Trey, but a lot of the teachers came back that, haven't worked with us for years.
Right.
And Chris was a huge part of that. But Chris has remained a really close friend, as his life had taken off, it was just like we even made sure that we set it up to where Chris, he was just like, I got to be a part of this,
right.
So to make sure he was in town.
It was real cool, and he got involved with like a lot of the new kids, and
that was fun.
He embraced it,
Yeah, I need to get in touch with him. He's definitely on the list. I feel like
he's Dallas famous.
Oh, he's he's bigger than Dallas famous. Now, it's like the Jason Janik podcast. Like, we're friends, so we try to space out guests. So whenever I see him get a guest, I'm like, okay, that'll be next season. Paul Slavens, I've been trying to land, and I just haven't gotten my butt to Denton is what happens. So it's cool. He'll be out there. I feel like we need to back up a little bit in your story to like some of the bands you had.
So just growing up in Dallas, right? So my first band in Dallas in the 4th grade was called Alien. And it was me and a guy named Aaron Comas, who's the drummer for the Spin Doctors. And he's a Dallas guy.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they're a New York band. He's been in New York for years. But, as kids, we were here.
Right.
And my best friend, also my best friend to this day, Doug Neal, and we started a band called Alien. And that was like my first band in the 4th grade. And then I basically played in bands ever since.
Did you gig with that band ever?
Yeah. We played at the Sheriff Israel Summer Camp.
Nice.
Yes, we played at our day camp. That was a huge gig. That was awesome. And then we played at the Promenade Shopping Center.
Yep.
So those.
I feel
and then we would play we would do our practices out on Aaron's porch. So at any weekend you could see us playing in his front yard.
That's great. I feel like my first shows were all at temple gigs or something.
That was killer.
That's fun. To get to play for your whole camp is kind of cool.
Oh, it was awesome.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I fell off the stage. It was awesome.
At that age, though, I'm just blown away because I was barely conscious of music at that point.
Aaron's older brother was a major influence on Alien. Okay. He basically would like kind of pick out our tunes, plus like whatever Doug was learning in his guitar lessons. But like, it's funny because one of the songs we played, I would cite as one of the most important songs in my life, like influential songs. And I would have never heard of it probably if it weren't for the Comases, but it was I Just Want to Have Something to Do by the Ramones. Huh. And it's the first song on Road to Ruin. And like when I heard Road to Ruin, I was just like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know, so like, I mean, I can take like my whole life and career and songwriting and all that stuff, I can go right to that song and like what it did for me. And like, I was like, what I'm going to be. You know, like as much as Tom Jones.
Yeah.
You know, like Tom Jones, huge influence. I was just like, that's what I'm going to be. And when same sort of thing. Like when I was just trying to be, you know, the Ramones with Tom Jones singing.
What, like, from that point, do you remember how long before you started writing your own songs?
On some level, I kind of was always making up songs.
Right. Like, do you remember like the first time you're like, this is a song we're playing?
Well, in that band in particular, we were basically covering Radar Love by Golden Earring, but there was a whole, like my friends didn't know the song and I was just like telling them, oh, it goes like this and you play a thing like this and you do it.
Days of being the band leader.
So basically I didn't play an instrument yet, right? So I just was singing them their parts and we reframed it and then I was like, well, it's kind of different than the song. Maybe I've written a song. So I changed like a lyric, you know?
Right.
So that was kind of like my first song that I wrote for the band.
Gotcha.
But I totally, you know, it was a total ripoff, as most first songs are.
Yeah, sure.
But so that's where that happened. And then after that band had broken up, Aaron was really good. We were all fourth graders, fifth graders by the time the band was over, whatever. But like he was ahead of us, and like the eighth graders in his brother's band wanted him to be the drummer for them. So he went to be in that band, and we were crushed.
Yeah.
But Doug and I, you know, were like, oh man, what are we gonna do? But then it came along Raphael Bemperod, and there's great Jewish drummers out there. In Dallas. And we formed a band, and his dad was the main rabbi at Temple Emmanuel. So when we worked up a bunch of songs, we got to go into his dad's office at Temple Emmanuel and use all the recording equipment they had to make our first. It was very that thing you do, you know, like the way we did the recording. It was all live. Mm-hmm. It was awesome.
That's fun.
So we did that, and that was called Black Pearl. Huh. And that was like, by then we're in like the seventh, eighth grade. And that's kind of what took us got to Booker T, where when I was at Booker T, I wasn't like really in a band. You know, I was jamming all the time.
Sure.
It was huge, like as far as playing with a ton of people. And that's where, you know, I started, and that whole jam culture was huge, especially like being around Kenny Withrow and that whole new bohemian scene. The jam party thing was a big thing.
Right.
So through all that and those jams that went on, and always being around the people that were better than you, you know, I shed my fear of just like, I found my way, like how, like, okay, that guy does that better than me, but I found my way into all those situations of like how I fit into these,
right,
find my space.
Yeah.
And it was huge for me. So then by the time like I'm saying huge a lot. And by the time we got to our senior year, we did like a little cover band that got to play the dances, which was not a thing at Booker T, really. It was, you know, so that was like, and it was always like Chuck Pangburn said, you know, that guy was always a rocker. And that's what I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to play for the crowd that was like at the dance.
Right.
Like,
right.
You know, it was cool to play jazz and be good at it. But, you know, I never thought I was going to be that guy. but I did always, like, everything they had to offer, I was into it. Like, I wanted to learn bebop. I wanted whatever they wanted to teach me, because I was just trying to be Edward Van Halen, right? and I didn't know what he did to get where he was, but I just wanted to be a really great guitar player. And at that point, I'd kind of like faded off of the singing thing. Like, I didn't think I was going to sing. And then by the time I got to my senior year and I'm playing in this band with my friends, we were called The Urge. And I was like, I'm going to start writing again. You know, I like, and it wasn't even like a conscious, like, I'm going to start writing. And it was just like, that's where I was headed. I remember even Aaron telling me at one point, like, we were sitting there having a conversation about what he thought our friends were all going to aspire to be musically. And I remember him saying, I think you're gonna like be that guy that like writes the songs and sings and just plays wicked rhythm guitar. And I was like offended. You know, like I never realized, you know, Aaron was paying me this huge compliment, really. Like, he's like, you're gonna lead the bands, like you're gonna form the bands, you know. But I was just like, he was basically saying to me, like, you're not going to be Edward Van Halen.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But even though, like, what I came to learn later about my heroes, it's like they were those guys, you know, out of all my heroes like that, Jeff Beck was probably the guy who, like, maybe, like, I mean, he was totally creative, but, like, you know, he didn't play his own songs.
Right. He was like doing the art. Yeah.
So anyway, when Aaron said that, I remember just being like, oh man, that's what he thinks of me. But really, he meant it as a full-on compliment. And he was 100% correct. That is where I was headed. And it is what I wound up becoming. And I still wound up being, I mean, I think I'm a pretty good guitar player.
I was going to say, do you think that you achieved like the level of guitar skill that you were hoping to at that age?
No, because I wanted to be Steve Vai or something like that. But then I realized what was way more important to me was being Eddie Van Halen, being a guy in a band who wrote killer tunes. And then, of course, Edward Van Halen, just this anomaly of a music, you know, it's like nobody.
Yeah. You pick some pretty crazy high.
I picked like right.
What about you? I mean, like, your dad is who he was, and your path was very different. But were there musicians, artists that you were kind of like, that's kind of what I wanted, like that when you started or when you were doing it? Like,
and it all comes back to Kenny Withrow.
Kenny Withrow. This is a funny story. So one of my favorite records of all time, and probably one of most influential records during high school, was Shooting Rubber Bands at the Stars. And I used to just pour over those lyrics and like I knew all the names of like and this was when I lived in Atlanta, so I had no connection connection to Dallas whatsoever. Right. And then and Edie, so her voice, I was thinking, you know, I could do that. I can be a singer in a band. Why couldn't I do that? You know? So she was one of the first people that
at the time
made me think that, you know?
Right.
And
there was a huge onslaught. It was the 90s. So there's all those women artists, Sarah McLachlan, Tori Amos, Fiona Apple. Like Fiona Apple's I love her, you know? Like the amount of women that were just so influential in my life, the women musicians back then, you know, made me think that I could do it. Also, in singing jazz and things like that, like Ella Fitzgerald is probably my top favorite, you know, Sarah Vaughan, Billie Holiday, all those ladies. And I love singing jazz. So I still like going back to the standards. I could sing that stuff all day long. I love it.
Were you writing too? Or?
So I never really wrote very much. I always had people saying, sing this, and, you know, or writing specifically for me. My band, Shanghai Five, Bill would write songs, you know, he knew my voice and he would write songs for me. So I never really did that. Very
kind
much.
Of us too.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how we met. He had songs and there they were, you know. I did go through a period of time when I first moved to Dallas, I picked up guitar. I'd kind of picked it up off and on my whole life, but never really stuck with it, never took lessons. And then when I first moved here, I was going through a really hard time, and then picked up guitar and probably wrote about 12, 15 songs, just like they all came out of me from nowhere. Never really done much. We played a couple of them in our sets, but I haven't done much with any of them. But yeah, that's about it. And then I've
never even really heard them.
Huh.
And then we write songs together. He writes the majority of them, but when we first started writing, we started Charming Gardeners basically he would like leave off a bridge or something, and so I would write that or that kind of thing. And so that's kind of how that happens, because he's much more prolific than me and very good songwriter. I mean, he's an amazing songwriter.
1, 2.
Ba-da-da-da, 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 ba-da-da-da. The summer sun that left you freezing really long and never leaving here before, it's still deceiving to you, but I know you're on a moonlight as clear as shadows flashing in the mirror, something held and nothing new, ready to let go. Remember, the very thing that could console would come back. Try to control everything, can't get back. Turn the house into a home, that's the spirit, don't look back. Ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da. The winter warmth, if it gets colder, could be more than I could show. The snowball pebble is a boulder when it's in your shoe. Spring is storm and feel the thunder, plant and seed to put us under. First mistake, a bird and plunder, ready to let go. Remember, the very thing that could console would come back. And try to control everything, can't get back. You can see but you can feel it, that's the spirit, don't look back. Ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da. We can hear you laughing, 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 let it lie. Nature has no rhyme, no wonder, sun is shining 6 feet under. Welcome to the endless summer, ready to let go. Remember, the very thing that could console will come back. And try to control everything you want, can't get back. Turn the house into a home, that's the spirit, don't look back. 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 That's the spirit, don't look back.
I realized that we just brushed over you guys. How did you meet?
Well, I was bartending in Deep Ellum at the time. When I moved here, I was really associated with Deep Ellum, and just that's basically where I was working all the time and doing everything.
As any Dallas musician,
gravitated towards Deep Ellum. That was like basically when we decided to move to Dallas. That's because I had visited here, and my ex had gotten the job, and it was in Deep Ellum, and I was just like, ooh, that place is awesome. That's where I want to go. Mm-hmm. And so we, came straight to Deep Ellum, and I was working in the tattoo shops. I learned how to bartend. I worked at Moto, which was a clothing store down there, which it was like the punk rock goth place to get all your clothes.
Okay.
There was no Hot Topic back then, you know.
Right.
So this guy was very forward thinking, and having all of this merchandise in one place in Deep Elm was the spot, you know. So I worked there, and then started meeting musicians, and then I got a bartending gig because I was drinking so much at Elm Street Bar down in right on Elm Street, across from Elm Street Tattoo too, and July Alley and all that area, right?
Right.
And so that's how I started meeting a lot more musicians. Actually, that's how I ended up meeting Greg from in Shanghai 5 and got in Shanghai 5. And then I met Rob Schumacher, who is a drummer he was a drum teacher here at Zounds. And so we started talking, and he was like, well, you have a master's degree in voice. You need to come over to Zounds. We need a voice teacher. You need to meet Mark Solomon. And so I just popped into our old building, which was over on Haskell at the time. And he happened to be there teaching one day during the day, which is not normal. He's not normally just here teaching, you know, because our thing is mostly an after-school program.
You're waiting for kids.
Mm-hmm. So, and he happened to be here or there, and yeah. So the rest is history. Basically, I started working for him, not him, at Zounds. We started teaching voice lessons, and then
I think the idea of the podcast is to tell the history, though. So
yeah.
So basically, she started working for Zounds, and then we formed the band. I had gotten. So the job actually.
Right, the job, but
right,
and
the
band before. Yeah.
And they and actually she worked for us for a little while, left because her husband got a job in Oklahoma City, and she was going back and forth because she was still in Shanghai 5, and so we would see each other, and then she was singing the national anthem at the roller derby, Dallas Assassins, and our kiddos were we had a band called, they were the halftime show, and they were called Children of the Grave. They were a Black Sabbath cover band.
Nice.
And so I was like, oh, hey, you're back. You know, we need a vocal teacher again, and I have polyps. I can't sing. I'm looking for a singer because I've got these songs. I need somebody to sing them. So basically at that time she came and started working again for the school, and we started putting together Charming Gardeners. And so that's how all that kind of started. And the cool thing, like she was saying, like I would say the difference between, you know, like I write the songs for Solly, and I basically write the songs for Charming Gardeners, and one of the things is like I write differently for the Gardeners, in the sense that it's a little more soul influenced, but with a lot of them jazzy chords. So it's kind of funny that like it does kind of like
goes more for
yeah
style.
Like, and our bass player Kinley is always teasing, Kinley Wolf he's always teasing me. He'd be another Dallas famous guy. That would be awesome for me.
Okay.
But he's always teasing me like, why so many chords?
Too many chords.
Because he also plays in like my very straight ahead stuff, you know,
Right.
The, you know, and not so many chords, you know.
Right.
But so it's pretty funny. So we joke about that, but that's kind of like one of the differences in like what we do. Because I would still say the Gardeners are a rock and roll band, but
rock and soul.
But it's it's very chordy and lots of lyrics and lots of.
Okay, so but I guess I didn't do my research good enough, because I thought that you guys started the school together. So now tell me how the school started.
So the school started. I was guitar teacher about town. I was on my bicycle, like just going house to house, and then it just really started to snowball, and so I started doing it out of my house, and then the snowball kept going. I was getting too many calls to take on all the students, and I opened up the school. I at the time was engaged to this lady named Mary, and then we got married and started the school together.
Okay, gotcha.
And she's awesome. Our marriage didn't work out, and when we got divorced, she basically left the business, and Amy had such a vested interest, and as we, you know, got to know each other and became involved, and then eventually, you know,
became what it
we
is
got.
now.
Yeah, then she, you know, it's half her business, and it's half her business anyway because we got married.
Right.
But like she's been
I have
here,
so
she's
many
been here
students
since the
and
beginning.
doing it for
I mean,
so
she
long.
built it, you know, and the split between me and my ex couldn't have been more amicable, and she supports everything we've done
cool.
and what the business has become.
Cool.
She actually lives in Korea now, and was super sad she couldn't be at the anniversary. Like she had every intention to be at the anniversary. She wanted to be there, and she's kept in really good touch. And so that kind of, it got, you know, we were super professional about it. Nobody knew for a long time. We didn't know for a long time, you know. But it was just one of those things out of osmosis, out of all the working together and stuff like that.
That's cool that the business didn't die over that, you know, because this is
I know, in
very
fact,
important.
it got better,
school.
I think.
Yeah, no, it seems like it. I want to be sure we get everything in. How about maybe highlighting a few former students that are doing some stuff? I know for sure one was Leah Lane, right?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't talked to her yet, but she's on the list.
Oh, yeah, she'd be great to interview, too.
Max Garrell.
Yep, work with Max. He's great.
There's some guys that we're super close with. They have a band called Close By. Jonas Smith and Julian Smith. Not related.
I'll have to check them out.
But the band's called Close By. They're a Brooklyn band, but they're Dallas guys, and they
just
like went to
here
Booker
last
T. They just played at Dada.
Like they moved to.
Yeah, they formed in. They were one of the first bands on State Fair Records. They were called Pueblo.
Okay.
But then they moved away and formed a band and decided it wasn't just the two of them anymore. And so they're definitely ones that we've kept in really good touch with. And,
right on.
And Bennett Littlejohn, he plays bass for Howdy and he's their producer.
Cool.
He's another one that's pretty.
Max Pacente has a band called About You, and he's out of LA now.
Yes, I've shot that band. They're very good.
Yeah,
I've seen them a few
love
times.
them. Love Max.
Kiddos that are like still with us and part of our scene, like to these days. There's a band called Death by Monkey that
That's a great name.
Simon actually just wrote about them. He picked them as the best in the best of issue.
Oh, cool.
As the they're not a Zound Sounds band, like they're one of my students and stuff. So but he picked them as the best student band in Dallas. And then we have a band here that I just produced their record with Jim King, and they're called AKA, which is really their initials. And that's how I write the kids in on my schedule. And it was just like AKA. Oh yeah, that should be our name. Okay, done. It's your name. But they just made a really, really cool record.
Right.
We did that over the summer.
Right.
So I'm super proud of that because it's here and now. And then like this weekend at Booker T Live, Tippy Ballady is playing.
Oh yeah, I've shot her at Artco before.
And so she's an old Zounds kiddo. In fact, the person who was here, Anne Marie, who just left, who's helping us with PR, she was the drummer in Tippy's high school band.
What?
Well, in Tippy's band growing up.
Right.
You know?
Oh, wild.
Yeah.
I asked her. She didn't say that she played anything.
She's a great drummer.
She's a great drummer, and she's like kind of just not.
Yeah. No, she's like, I'm doing PR. I'm like, we need more of that. Like, oh, you're a musician.
She's also a drummer.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. That's very funny. What's on the horizon for the band, for the school? What's coming up next?
We're about to do our 19th anniversary for Zounds now.
Oh, what's that going to be?
This year.
It's going to be a lot more low-key than last year. We're going to do it kind of like an open house party here.
We're going to do it here at the
since
B-side.
B-side just got picked as the best new music spot in Dallas. We figured,
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were like, we should just do it here. You know, we love to do these events like at Lee Harvey's is a favorite place.
Oh yeah,
it's great.
Lee Harvey's all summer. How did that happen? Jeez.
So the you know, that yard and just the families love to hang out there, and it's super fun.
Spot.
But sometimes just hooking up the date isn't always the easiest. And then as that was kind of going down, it was like, we just won best new music spot. We should just do an open house. We have our own venue,
you know?
So
there's a lot of room in here.
We're actually, but our shows get crazy packed because, you know, I think every kid has two parents or four brothers parents and a sister and brings their friends. I mean, our shows get crazy packed. So what we're probably going to have is like 2 stages, like one here, one on that side too. Right. And then maybe even doing some outside things.
Oh, like just keep it moving.
Yeah, it's like
smart.
just
and
all day, pull up some food trucks.
Because that's something that like a student band may not be that familiar with, is changing out gear for another set. They're probably like,
and we'll definitely backline that one, so they'll learn things like backline.
Yeah, like this is not your amp,
and that's November 16th, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be an all-day sucker. You know, that'll probably start at noon. Right now, there's even talk like we may pull in some vendors and kind of do it like, because we've done that before too, and kind of like kick off the holiday season with some of our favorite, artists and friends selling their wares while the kids are playing music and things like that.
Right on. What about the bands? Like, is there more shows coming up?
Like our bands?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think we have.
We don't actually have anything
on the
right
calendar
now.
for the rest.
I remember you saying you're looking for a new venue.
Yeah, we are definitely looking for new venues.
We've got a band here. If you're a venue,
original
if you're
music.
a band that wants to play with another band.
Yeah. We and actually we do have some some like in the spirit of buddy bands, like we have some friends that we're talking about that we really want to put some shows together with.
Yeah, that seems like
Chris
the way to do
Norwood's band.
Chris is great.
They're great.
He's opening for Marc Broussard. I just saw Marc Broussard at Longhorn.
Oh wow, nice.
Yeah, have you guys seen the new
some really
Longhorn?
good gigs? I've noticed. That's real cool.
Have you been to the new Longhorn yet?
I have not.
I highly recommend it. It's amazing.
I've been to the old one.
Yeah,
but and then. Yeah, I don't even remember what I was saying.
Oh, we're just talking about the future.
Charming Gardeners
stuff coming up.
Gigs.
Yeah, and then I have a band called Solly as well. And with
I know the name of that band, but I guess I didn't realize that was you.
It's me and David Mabry, who played with End Over End, and he plays that's like his back in the Deep Ellum heyday thing.
Right.
And then and Kinley Wolf. We're actually looking for a guitar player, another guitar player.
Okay.
But we've been playing a little bit of late. We had some pretty fun gigs. We just picked some like fun opening spots. That band AKA I was talking about, they did their record release party, and I was like, hey, how about letting the old guys open for you? And then and it was great. It was actually the most packed we'd ever had this place. And then the next week, Tommy Stinson played here from The Replacements.
Yeah, we didn't get to that yet.
And we opened that too.
Sorry to interrupt, but like, so you had a band with Tommy?
We skipped the whole LA years.
Yeah, we skipped all your LA stuff. We don't have enough time for all that, but just like really quickly.
So I moved.
Austin too.
So my thing is like this. Here's the short of it. So a Dallas guy, when I was like 18, 19 years old, I moved to Austin, as you do. Right? I lived there for 2.5 years. And while I was there, I really found myself as a songwriter, singer-songwriter, guitar player, guy in a band. It was all very much in that Midwest rock and roll, late 80s Replacements, Soul Asylum kind of vibe.
Yep.
And Husker Du, that's what my band was like.
Oh, okay.
And we were called the Clowns. And towards the end of the Clowns, one of my favorite guitar players, he was in one of my favorite bands, lived in Austin, and he walked up to me. His name's Eddie Munoz, and he was in the Plimsolls.
Oh yeah, I just shot him.
And he comes up to me and he's like, hey, I love your band. Can I be in your band? And I was like, yes. And so Eddie joins the band, and he's like, this band needs to move to LA. And so we moved to LA. We didn't actually play with him for too long after we got to LA. In fact, I don't even think we made it to LA with him, but we went ahead and moved to LA anyway.
Right.
And then and the Clowns did our thing in LA for a while, and it was cool. We made a lot of friends and got into the LA scene, and in that time I met Tommy. And then Bash and Pop was together at that time. They were breaking up, or maybe breaking up, and I auditioned for Bash and Pop. And basically I had gotten the gig, but my friend Brian Baker, who is in Bad Religion, played Minor Threat, and but so he was kind of like my champion in LA. Like he would tell people like, oh, you can't get me, but you should call Marc. And that worked great for me.
Wow.
Well, Tommy was one of those guys. And then basically Brian decided, you know what, I will take that Bash and Pop gig. So the band that Brian was in came and got me. And then that band weirdly broke up, and like the drummer went to join the Goo Goo Dolls, and the singer, other guitar player guy, went and joined REM, and then Tommy called me because Brian joined Bad Religion, and that's when I wound up playing with Tommy. And Tommy was like, let's just blow off Bash and Pop and form a new band, and that's how Perfect formed.
Wow.
And then we made a couple records, and then Perfect broke up, just record company weird stuff. I mean, we loved each other, we loved being in a band together, but we were hung up in a bad contract. And that's when the whole Guns N' Roses thing came along for him. And it was like, you got to do that.
Yeah.
And that's when I left LA, went to New York, started working with my best friend from the 4th grade, Aaron Comas, to get my new music recorded. I recorded what would become the Clumsy record. And that was a bunch of music I had written with Mike Malinin from the Goo Goo Dolls. And I lived in this weird apartment, and it was all just like, it was all music all the time, in my LA experience.
Yeah.
And then by the end of Perfect, I was just like, I got to get out of LA. So I went to New York to like figure out what my next move was. Recorded all this music with Aaron, and then of course get offered a record deal from Idol Records in Dallas.
Huh.
And it's like, I'm going back to Dallas.
Wild.
And I had a friend, because I was in New York, I was broke. I had an offer, and that's also when I had a friend who said, hey, why don't you come teach guitar at this music store where I'm running the learning center. Huh. I think you'd be great at it.
Wow.
And he was right. I was great at it. So boom, all roads led back to Dallas, put out the Clumsy record on Idol. It did pretty well. It got pretty good pub. I'm very proud of the fact that Irv told me he recouped.
Right,
so
nice.
That makes me happy.
Sure.
And then from there, basically Clumsy ended in New York on 9/11.
Huh.
We were playing at New Music Seminar. And it was just like, nobody knew what to do after 9/11. And in those few months, everything just changed.
Yeah.
And at that point, I just started writing a bunch of new songs. And that's when I formed Solly. And so ever since then, it's been the Solly thing. Then I got the Polyps, and
then that's when we met.
And then
Wow.
Charming Gardeners.
Okay, now
and now I can sing again. And of late, boom. So now I've got 2 bands, and I'm trying to figure out how we're going to hit 25. But I know there's a lot of music on tap.
Yeah.
I just don't have specific plans. But I roll like that. Our school rolls like that.
Right. That last 5 minutes could have been the entire podcast broken down.
In a nutshell, yeah.
That's amazing. I'm glad we got all that out. I am getting up against it. I just want to leave. Maybe Amy, you could end it with some kind of advice for a young musician or a parent of a musician, or getting them started in this crazy world of music.
Well, lessons are always helpful,
Mm-hmm.
right? That you need to have that foundation so you know what you're doing when you get out there in the world, and so you can have a musical language, you can talk the language, and then we can help them find their voices. And that's kind of what I do as a voice teacher as well, which we didn't even get to any of that yet.
I like how she took that. She said start with lessons, but then it morphed into call us.
Well, I mean,
not just any lessons, people. Zound Sounds lessons.
Yeah. Well, that's your advice.
No, any lessons. Everybody's fighting the good fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, wait, so we do have a minute. Let's your voice teacher, that's something that you were doing before this.
Yeah, so with my master's degree, I took vocal pedagogy, and I never really wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to sing. I had vocal performance degrees. I wanted to sing, but, life had other plans. And of course I did. My dad told me my whole life, oh, you'd be a great teacher. And I railed against it. And here I am. I'm a great teacher. And I love it. I do love it. And I love the fact that I get to influence and help other people find their voices through music, and and the joy of music, and just what it can do for your soul as a human, So that's what I do every day. I teach at Booker T. I do that as well at Booker T.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm alumni.
Yeah, I knew you were an alumni because we talked about it, but I didn't know you were teaching there.
Yeah, I've been teaching there. I think this is about my 6th or 7th year. I teach.
What's funny is I've been I need to talk to someone that teaches there, and I have been this whole freaking time.
Well, here I am. Yeah.
So I was going to say too, as far as the teaching thing, and I always thought, wanting to be a rock star, so to speak, you know, was about reaching as many people. I mean, really reaching as many people as possible, you know. But I mean, there's only so many Bonos or John Lennons or whatever, you know what I mean, that really grab people in their soul and whatever. And I realized in the teaching, like real quick, like the influence and the depth of it is much greater.
And we have an influence on the kids, and they take this with them for the rest of their lives. Yeah. You know, these people are still doing it in their 30s, 40s, you know. And
we know that because they
come back.
Yeah.
I mean, that anniversary was unbelievable. It wound up being a 7-hour show because we just had so many people that wanted to come be part of it.
From opera to jazz to metal, like everything.
Huh. That's incredible. Hey, I think we're going to wrap up, but I want to thank you guys for having me. Thank you for what you're doing for a bunch of young people. And, you know, we're going to have links to everything on the show notes.
Old people too.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. All ages. It's not just kids.
Yes.
If you've always wanted to take lessons, any age, right? Okay. I didn't realize that, but now we do.
Yeah, we got the old man band is going to play at the next Zound show. The dad band. We call it the dad band. We don't call it.
They don't have a name yet besides that.
Yeah. Right on. Okay, hey, thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'd like to thank Amy and Marc for letting me come out to Zound Sounds and talk to them for a bit. You can check out shows, take classes, all ages. The links are in the bio. Get your own Dallas Famous Podcast t-shirt. The link is now available in the show notes. Thank you again to the Deep Ellum Community Center for letting us record there. Theme song, Unstoppable by Salim Nuralla. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, follow, all the good stuff, and share it with your friends. We'll see you next time.